Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Hope you like the new format. I'm trying to pretty things up a little bit. We are actually streaming now, so it takes a little bit for the stream to kick on and get going, and that's why we have the countdown. We'll kind of play with things as we go forward. Hopefully it runs smoothly, and if it doesn't, we can get the wrinkles ironed out. You know, there were a series of commercials running on television several years ago for Citi. You know, Citi offers a variety of financial services, including credit cards, online banking, mortgages, investments, and insurance. But they have really made a name for themselves recently with their advertising campaign geared at identity theft solutions. Now, you probably remember these commercials. One in particular shows two old ladies sitting on a couch talking about all the fun that they had, spending money, painting the town red, and riding around on their new motorcycles. All of which they were able to do because they had stolen someone else's credit card information. But what makes the commercial especially funny is that the voices don't match the people who are talking. They don't talk like you would expect little old ladies to talk. Instead, their voices sound like two rebel-rousing escaped convicts looking for trouble. And the idea, of course, is that these two little old ladies had their identity stolen. At the end of the commercial, it lists the two ladies' names, and underneath it reads, "Identity theft victims." It's a really clever and amusing way to show that identity theft is a very real danger in this day and age. So much personal information is exchanged over the internet and placed in computer databases that people should be concerned with who has access to it and how secure it actually is. You might remember a few years ago, approximately 26 million veterans had their identity stolen when an employee from the Department of Veterans Affairs violated policy and took personal information from the department's database home with them. The data included names, social security numbers, and dates of birth for every veteran discharged since 1975, as well as some of their spouses. Identity theft is a real problem. As more and more people readily use computers, it doesn't seem to be a problem that's going away. But I want to talk to you this morning about identity theft and protecting yourself from it, just in a different light. The type of identity theft that I want to discuss has nothing to do with finances, but it can cost an individual a whole lot more than money. It can cost them their reputation, their influence, their joy, and perhaps even their salvation. Satan is poised to rob us of who we are. He is ready to steal our livelihood. He would love nothing more than to possess us and to take control of our identity. So we're looking this morning at Luke chapter 4, and what we find here is a case of identity theft. Scripture says that this individual that we're going to read about was a man possessed by the spirit of an unclean demon. And Christ met this man in the synagogue of all places, and through a miraculous display of power, restored his identity. Look with me at verse 31 and following of Luke chapter 4. It reads, "And he came down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and he was teaching them on the Sabbath. And they were amazed at his teaching because his message was delivered with authority. In the synagogue, there was a man possessed by the spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out with a loud voice, 'Leave us alone. What business do you have with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God.' But Jesus rebuked him, saying, 'Be quiet and come out of him.' And when the demon had thrown him down in the midst of the people, it came out of him without doing him any harm. And amazement came upon them all, and they began talking with one another, saying, 'What is this message? For with authority and power he commands the unclean spirits, and they come out.' And the news about him was spreading into every locality of the surrounding region." Now, verse 32 of the passage we just read reads, "And they were amazed at his teaching, for his message was with authority." The people standing around in the synagogue that day, listening to Jesus as he spoke, could tell that there was something different about this man. He spoke about spiritual matters in a way that they had never heard before. He spoke the truth to them, and he spoke it with divine authority. Jesus' miracle healing is a display of his divine authority. Through healing this man with an unclean spirit, Jesus was confirming his words. He was validating the words he spoke. He was talking the talk and walking the walk, if you will. He was putting his words into action and showing the crowd that he was indeed the Son of God. Notice verses 36 and 37 again. And amazement came upon all, and they began talking with one another, saying, "What is this message? For with authority and power he commands the unclean spirits, and they come out." And the report about him was spreading into every locality in the surrounding district. Notice the simplicity in the healing of the demon-possessed man. Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." That's all it took. That's all he needed to say. The demon left the man without doing any harm, and the reason why is because even the demon knew divine authority when he saw it. Even the demon knew who was in charge. Even the demon recognized the identity of the Messiah. Isn't that interesting? Even when others would not recognize or failed to recognize who Jesus was and the authority he had, the demons did. But look a little more closely and notice the demon's words again. He said, "I know who you are, the Holy One of God." No sooner does he utter these words than Jesus tells him to be quiet. And then notice on down in verse 41, it reads, "Demons were also coming out of many, shouting, 'You are the Son of God.' But rebuking them, he would not allow them to speak because they knew him to be the Christ." Why was Jesus silencing the demons? Why would he tell them to be quiet? I mean, if the whole idea was to display his divine authority, then why would he object to these demons calling him the Son of God? What would be wrong with him revealing his identity? Well, I think there is a very important reason why Jesus silenced these demons on the issue of his identity. I think it's because he didn't want them to have any part in defining who he was. You see, God and God alone is the only one who has the right to define who we are. And he had already defined Jesus. Remember his words when Jesus was baptized. He said, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." God defines us as well. When we arise from the waters of baptism, we become his sons and daughters. We are identified as being Christians, children of God. And we must protect our identity by the way that we live. We must guard against identity theft. You see, the devil is constantly trying to define our identity. He is always trying to challenge our identity as a Christian. When we're in the desert, when we feel spiritually depleted and emotionally parched, he whispers in our ear, "You're not really a child of God. You're not saved. I mean, if you're saved, then why don't you feel like it? If you love God so much, then why do you do so many bad things? Why are you such a failure? Do you think God loves a failure? Don't you think God is sick and tired of forgiving you?" And the whispers increase all the more. They prick at your innermost being. Eventually, the devil pulls out the biggest tool in his arsenal, the past. For some, he zeroes in on defining moments we'd like to forget. He focuses on major mistakes and regrettable decisions and dishonorable acts. He uses abuse and rejection, whatever he can use to beat you to despondency, because he knows that everyone has a past. He is well aware that everyone has things in their past that they're trying to get past. His goal is for you to define yourself by your failures. We all know how personally disheartening it is when the devil is calling us a failure and has a whole list of things to prove his point. I know how hard it is to press forward when the devil has convinced you that you are someone who will never go forward. But here's something loud and clear. The devil is not authorized to define your identity. Remember, he is not the divine authority. God is. Satan may drag up the past. He may use current struggles, or he may even speak a certain amount of truth to get into your ear, in your head, in your heart. But in the end, not only is his definition of your identity false, it's contrary to what the Father has called you to be. Listen to your identity according to the word of the Lord. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. For you once were not a people, but now you are the people of God. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. I particularly like where it says that we are a people for God's own possession. As Christians, we belong to God. We are marked as his own. We bear his identity because we were made in his image. And when we made the decision to leave the life of sin, he redefined us. He gave us a new life, and he gave us a new name. The name Christian, which literally means adherents of Christ or those who belong to him. I love what Paul says in Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. The question I want to close with this morning is, are you possessed? Can we say confidently with Paul that I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me? Does our identity reflect that of one who has been purchased by God? Do we glorify God in our body? When others look upon us, what do they see? Do they see Christ living in us? You know, the man Jesus encountered in the synagogue was possessed by an unclean spirit. A demon had inhabited his body. It had taken control of his life and stolen his identity. But Christ restored the man. By his divine authority, he redefined the man, giving him his identity back. Satan is always looking for ways to possess us, to call us his own, to get us to doubt who we are and who we truly belong to. His mission is to steal our identity and to redefine our spiritual status. But Christians belong to one greater, one who has authority over Satan and his demons, and one who offers the identity theft solution. So, I ask you again this morning, are you possessed? I love you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.